Welcome everyone to another episode of the Shade and Shit Talking Podcast. I'm your host TK, and as always, I thank you guys for tuning in. So this week, there is a lot that went on concerning, black people in various aspects. So instead of just keying in on one singular topic, I feel like I would serve you guys best to, talk a little bit about everything that I read and saw. Now, before I do that, I kind of want to start off by revisiting something that I talked about last week. Last week's episode was a dedication to a national treasure, national black treasure, in my opinion, Dr. Olivia Hooker. And again, for those of you who are not familiar with her, she was the last living survivor of the Tulsa Massacre of 1921. Well, when I dropped that story, I received a lot of feedback from a lot of different people. But one of the most important and one of the biggest pieces of information that I received from this came from a friend of mine. Shout out to my guy, Brett Smith, for turning me on to this article. Well, he hit me up with something that I missed, and I honestly don't know how I missed this, but I missed it nonetheless, and it was very insightful, very interesting. So I felt like I wanted to start off the podcast by sharing it with y'all. Now, first of all, let me just say, again, thank you to Dr. Olivia Hooker for all that she did, and all that she became in spite of. And I respect and appreciate her and her legacy. So, this article I received is a direct reflection of her, is directly related to her and all that we've talked about. So, the mayor of Tulsa, he has reopened an investigation into the possibility of mass graves from the 1921 massacre. Again, it wasn't a riot, it was a goddamn massacre. This story came out in the Washington Post on October 3rd of this year. And again, I don't know how I missed this. But in this article, the Tulsa mayor said that the city will reinvestigate whether there are mass graves from a century-old race massacre that left hundreds of black people dead. Not the handful that those who are whitewashing America's history, those who are trying to sweep this under the rug, who swept this under the rug, continuously say it wasn't just a handful, it was hundreds. My opinion is more than the 300 or so that they know about. Now, this announcement that he made, it came in the wake of another Washington Post story about the unresolved questions surrounding one of the worst episodes of racial violence in U.S. history, outside of slavery, of course. That was the worst. Now, as the city of Tulsa had prepared to commemorate the 100th anniversary of this rampage, Mayor G.T. Bynum, who is a Republican and is white, and I'm not gonna lie, both of those caught me off guard. Just being honest. I mean, judging from the Republicans that we have seen and dealt with on a daily basis, this comes as a shock to a lot of us. I know. Now, he said in his interview that, and I quote, "We owe it to the community to know if there are mass graves in our city. We owe it to the victims and their families. We will do everything we can to find out what happened in 1921. Now, just hearing that stirs feelings and emotions within me, because black folks just don't get the justice that they seek. Black folks just don't get the justice that they deserve. Black folks don't get the recognition that they should. We definitely don't get the reparations that we're owed. So seeing this and hearing this and reading this makes me feel a little bit better about, the things that's going on in America. A little bit. I mean, it's not blinding me from anything else that's going on for those super woke folks who might want to challenge what I'm saying. But we all know how, when it comes to black bodies and black death, a lot of shit just get shooed away, swept under the rug. But anyways, let me move on. Now, just to give you a quick rundown for those who still don't know what this is, and quite honestly, for those who don't know about Tulsa, it's not surprising. It wouldn't surprise me. I talked to 3 people who were born and raised and lived in Tulsa who told me that they didn't know about this massacre. They didn't learn about it till they were 17, 18, adulthood, basically. That just goes to show the whitewashing of America's history that we talk about, that people swear is not real, but this is real. 2 of the guys were white, by the way. So I know it's real because they're taught a different thing than what we're taught, more extensive education than what the inner city schools are giving. We know that. But anyways, this rampage started on May 31st, 1921, when a white mob descended on Greenwood, which was a thriving business district, which was known as Black Wall Street. This mob set fire and bombed black-owned businesses, hundreds of black-owned businesses and houses, killing more than 300 people and leaving more than 10,000 people homeless. Now, there were survivors like Dr. Hooker who recounted bodies being tossed into mass graves. Now, this mayor said that the city would re-examine 2 Tulsa cemeteries as well as a former city dump, and these were all places that state investigators and archaeologists first identified as possible mass grave sites back in 1998. Now, the city is planning on using new technology to see whether there's evidence that bodies were dumped there, and the mayor said that they will investigate these sites to determine whether they are paupers' graves or mass graves. He said that they will work with retired archaeologist Bob Brooks, who worked on the investigation in '98, and he is one of the foremost experts in that field. So it looks like they ain't taking no shortcuts. Now, back in '98, '99, there was this white man by the name of Clyde Eddy, who at the time of the massacre was 10 years old. Now, he told authorities that he saw white men digging a trench in the Pottersfield section of the Oak Lawn Cemetery in 1921. By the way, if I didn't mention it, Mr. Eddy is a white man himself. Now, he also told officials that he peeked inside wooden crates and he saw black people's corpses. So, based on Mr. Eddy's story, based on state archaeologists led by Mr. Clyde Snow, who's also one of the world's most foremost forensic anthropologists, they searched for evidence of mass graves in Oak Lawn in the area that Mr. Eddy specified. And what they discovered was an anomaly that bears all the characteristics of a dug pit or trench with vertical walls and an unidentified object within the approximate center of the feature. Now, the Tulsa Race Riot Commission, which concluded this report back in 2001, they said, and I quote, "With Mr. Eddy's testimony, this trench-like feature takes on the properties of a mass grave." And this commission also recommended excavation, but it never happened. But it's happening now. Now, by doing this, this mayor is pissing a lot of people off. He's pissing off the ones who, like I said earlier, whitewash history, sweep things under the rug, don't want to acknowledge the heinous crimes against its own citizens that America has perpetrated for decades and hundreds of years, actually. And some feel like that they are ripping the scab off of an old wound. But here's the thing. You cannot expect a wound to heal if you don't address it properly, which is what this mayor is attempting to do right now. So shout out to that mayor, Mr. Bynum. I sincerely hope that you guys do find it. And even though they're no longer here, you can give those who perished in this massacre closure and their families peace of mind, knowing that they will have a proper burial, proper ceremony. So shout out to you guys once again. So, as I mentioned earlier, I talked about how we as black people, we don't get the justice that we seek. We don't get the justice that we deserve. And, thinking about it, the justice system, the Just Us system, isn't designed for us. It isn't designed. A system that was created to hold us back isn't designed to appease us or be fair to us or towards us. I understand that. But still, this is 2018, and in theory, shit should be a lot better than what it is. Now, with saying that, it made me think about a story that we were dealing with on Black with No Chaser. And the other day, our founder and my brother, Mr. CJ Lawrence, he sat down with the family of Mr. Willie Jones Jr. And a lot of you outside of Mississippi are probably clueless as to who he is. Well, Mr. Jones was a 21-year-old young man who was found hanging from a tree outside of his child's mother home in Scott County, Forest County, in Forest, Mississippi, on February 8th. And the thing about it is, he was murdered. He was lynched. But the grand jury decided not to indict anyone from the family of Willie's ex-girlfriend, even though he was found, swinging in their yard from a tree. Even though her whole family was home at the time, and her stepfather had previously threatened to kill this man. Nothing. The grand jury indicted no one. So his family is still they're seeking justice for this. Now I'm no lawyer. I'm no law professor. I don't know where they go from here, considering the latest chapter to this. I don't know if now the FBI would take over, or I just don't know. But the family has rejected the idea of a suicide. The Scott County Sheriff, Mr. Mike Lee, had initially said that his death is consistent with suicide, and there was no evidence of a racially motivated crime. Now, maybe I should have started off by saying that, of course, he's black, and the mother of his child is white. Mr. Lee also went on to say that Jones had fought with his girlfriend and he threatened to hang himself shortly before he was found dead near her home in Forest. But his mother said that she don't believe it and she'll never believe it. She said there's nothing they can do to make her believe that her child hung himself. He didn't have a drug problem. He wasn't depressed. He was always smiling. He would give you the shirt off of his back. Now, I personally don't believe, like, and again, I don't know, like the whole setup as far as the scene of the hanging and all of that, what was there, but I have a lot of questions myself, and I'm real interested in seeing and hearing what all comes out of it. But where did the rope come from, and like I just don't believe it. I don't. I mean, our history suggests that we shouldn't believe it, because there have been a disturbing number of hanging cases that has happened over, the last several years that has mirrored Mrs. Jones's case on the surface. Back in 2015, Mr. Otis Byrd was found hanging from a tree behind his house with his bed sheets around his neck, attached to a limb that's 15 feet above the ground with no chair in sight. The Justice Department did not rule it a homicide. Mr. Philip Carroll was 22 years old when his body was found hanging from a tree in a Washington Addition neighborhood in Jackson. His death was ruled a suicide. Nick Naylor, 23-year-old kid, was found hanging by his dog leash after going for a walk in Kemper County in 2003. His death was ruled a suicide. I remember this one vividly. In 2000, Mr. Raynard Johnson, 17-year-old kid, was found hanging from a pecan tree yards from his family front door. It was ruled a suicide. Like, I'm sorry, I just cannot personally believe that these deaths are suicides. I don't. Especially with all of the circumstances surrounding these incidents. Like, I just know. I grew up in Mississippi and climbed trees and all that shit, man. Like, I just don't believe it. Like, But again, like I said earlier, we don't get the same justice that others get. They don't investigate and prosecute with the same fervor and the same zeal for us that they do others. They just don't. It's as if, it's not as if we don't matter. It's still the 3/5, compromise going on. We're not a singular person. We don't, it's all just very disheartening. It's sad. It's disheartening. And, I want to send my heartfelt condolences to the Jones family for what they're going through right now. I can't even imagine it. But they do have some very smart, knowledgeable, hardworking people in their corner that will attempt to help them to get the justice that they seek, the closure that they deserve and need. Speaking of, needing closure and getting answers, I feel like what's going on over in Hoover, Alabama, is turning into a similar type of situation. Now, what I'm talking about is the murder by Emantic Bradford Jr. at the hands of the police in the mall on Thanksgiving night. So initially, they came out and said that this young man who was visiting on leave for Thanksgiving shot a 12-year-old and an 18-year-old in this suburban Birmingham mall, and that an officer killed him as he fled. Now, the police, they later changed the story, saying witnesses and forensic tests indicated that while Bradford may have been involved in an altercation, he likely did not fire the rounds that injured the victims. Now, his family said that Bradford Jr. was not at the mall with any of the victims or the suspect, that he went there with his cousin and two friends, and he had a permit to possess the weapon that he carried. He was helping people to escape, what was going on. So the police, they did not contact this man's family. They didn't extend them the courtesy of promptly, quickly letting them know that the police had killed their son. Now, he has received an apology, but I mean, that still doesn't erase the fact that they dropped the ball, that they fucked up. That they fucked up really, really bad with this whole situation. It also is very disturbing that the autopsy came out, and it is very disturbing as well. Now, the results showed that EJ was shot from behind 3 times that night. 3 times. This autopsy was an independent autopsy done by the family because they wanted to get it right, because, I mean, we all know how things go in the pursuit of justice. It shows in this report that was commissioned by this private pathologist, it shows that EJ possessed and posed no threat when he was fatally shot. No threat. And like I said, according to witnesses, he was helping other shoppers to safety. This man was in the military. He was trained to protect and serve, unlike a huge majority of these cops that murder people with no regard. And that's what he got in return. He got what's shown in the autopsy. He got shot in the neck, head, and back. And he also had a laceration on the right side near his eyebrow, which indicates he fell forward. So the family's attorney, Mr. Benjamin Crump, he came out with a statement that said this evidence corroborates the testimony of multiple witnesses who said that EJ was trying to help others. These findings are devastating and heartbreaking to EJ's family, compounding the shattering impact of this unnecessary and unwarranted killing. He is also calling on the Hoover police to release all evidence related to the killing, including video and the local medical examiner's report. And I'm really interested in seeing what the discrepancies are in their report. EJ's death, his senseless death, is the latest in the egregious examples of black men being killed because they are perceived to be a threat due to the color of their skin. That's what we're dealing with day in and day out. And I sincerely hope when the smoke clears that E.J. Bradford's family get the justice that they deserve, the justice that they seek. But, judging with the history of this country, I can't honestly say that I believe they will. And that's fucked up. So, in light of, recent political happenings, I thought I'd dust off this segment of politics as usual for this week's episode. And I'm going to kick this week off by talking about the biggest story that's going on right now, which is the death of George H.W. Bush. Now, first of all, I don't relish in anyone's dying, and my condolences to the family in their time of mourning. But that's about it as far as I'm concerned. That's as far as I can take it. I was never a supporter of Bush, either Bush. But this Bush in particular has a long and complicated history of race, civil rights, black people in general. Now, did you guys know that he ran for Senate back in the 60s? He came out against the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 by deriding his opponent as being radical for supporting a bill that ended segregation in public places and banned employment discrimination. He said, and I quote, "The new Civil Rights Act was passed to protect 14% of the people. I'm also worried about the other 86%. Unquote. Now here's my thing. God damn it, 90% of the other 86% are the reasons why bills like the Civil Rights Act was created in the first goddamn place. So you worried about the preservation of white supremacy? Now, what's crazy about it was that his stance was at odds with his family's long history of supporting civil rights. His daddy, Prescott Bush, was a Connecticut senator who worked to desegregate schools and to protect voting rights. And he also raised money for the United Negro College Fund. But that was up north. Bush moved to goddamn Texas. He became, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do, right? So, and then when he ran, he also ran on a platform that, it was another dog whistle type of platform that was racist without being overtly racist. The way he handled the Willie Horton situation, and then the way he did his war on drugs. Like he has much. His actions and his record left much to be desired in the eyes of black people. So, I'm not going to get on here and, pretend that I felt some type of way about him in a good way and all of that. I'm not a disrespectful person. So, like I said, condolences to his family. But even in death, I will not romanticize a man who stood for a lot of things that was detrimental to people who look like me. It is what it is. Now, speaking of his death, did you all happen to catch, the funeral on TV? So, I was watching this thing, and you had Jimmy Carter, his wife, you had the Clintons, you had the Obamas. They were all just sitting there chopping it up, laughing, having a good goddamn time. And then Toupee Fiasco and his wife Melania showed up. And first of all, just that dude is he kills. He is the killer of good vibes for anything. Like, he showed up, everything changed. I bet even George Bush is in his casket like, fuck. But he came and, like, did you see the look on Hillary's face? Like, she didn't even look his way. Like, she looked like she wanted to just get up and just slap the shit out of this dude. And, like, you really can't blame her. That whole situation was a masterclass in decorum and, niceties, because this motherfucker has spent the last 2+ years, screaming, lock her up every chance he get. And then, he on the same row as her, like it's all good. Same with the Obamas. But one thing I kind of felt about that whole situation was that, and reading different stories and seeing different articles and different people talk about it, when Hillary did what she did, she was applauded for standing her ground, for being mad. Whereas I really don't see Michelle and Barack getting that same type of nice coverage if they had stonewalled Orange Foulious like she did. Because, I mean, he has been going at Obama's neck since well before he started to run for presidency with the whole birther movement. And even Michelle said in her book that she would never forgive this orange fuck for what he did. But, in true classy Obama fashion, they were warm and accepting of his ugly ass at that moment. But a part of me wished she'd have rolled her goddamn eyes so hard that she nodded off and just turned her head and ignored him and his wife. I would love to see the fallout from that, because we know it would have been a lot different than the applause that Hillary got. Speaking of death, since we're talking about death in politics, I think we're about to get close to the death of this presidency. I think the end is almost near for Donald Trump as president. Man, everybody is telling. Cohen is telling. Flynn is telling. Like, Mueller is getting at everybody, and everybody's starting to sing. And the best news that I received is stories coming out now that says Don Jr. is worried that he might be indicted. And we all know how that's going to go. When Don Jr. gets indicted, he is going to sing like the greatest singer you have ever heard. He is going to sing his heart out, because he knows if the shoe was on the other foot, his daddy would sail him up the river fast as hell. So just be patient, people. It's coming. Now, who's going to take control after that? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to turn out. But we need to get this orange embarrassment the fuck out of office. And Mueller is doing everything he can to get at him. And me personally, I applaud him for it. So this quote unquote witch hunt that these are, his sympathizers are talking about has produced numerous arrests, numerous convictions. So it is what it is. And I am looking forward to the end of this season of politics as usual, with Trump in handcuffs and that toupee flapping in the fucking wind as they hauling his ass off to the paddy wagon. Go Mueller, go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gather around for this week's episode of Colonizing Nonsense. My first colonizer nonsense moment takes me to Leicester, England. Listen, I know it's not America, but hey, that's where the colonies originated from, so debate your mama, it still count. Headline: Woman's Botox party warning after lip filler swelling. Oh my God, y'all should really see this picture, by the way. So, a woman's lips had swelled up so much that they touched her nose after she had filler injected at a Botox party. Oh shit. Rachel Napier from Leicestershire, England, said she shouted in pain after she was given the treatment by a beautician at her friend's house. Now, she was rushed to A&E Hospital when her lips swelled dramatically after seeking private treatment to fix the problem. Oh, shit. After agreeing to get Botox on her forehead, she said that the beautician noticed a lump on her lip, which came from an injury she sustained when a fire door hit her at the age of 13. She said that lump is her number one insecurity. As she pointed it out, she was just drawn in. So, she allowed this unlicensed beautician to inject some shit in her lips. So after returning home, Miss Napier said that she felt unwell. Later that night, she woke up and couldn't feel her lips. She said her lips were the size that she had not seen before. She said she contacted a beautician on FaceTime who she said was gasping and holding her hand over her mouth. God damn. Man, listen. It amazes me that black people are talked about for their lips, talked about for their ass, talked about for their noses, yet non-people of color, non-black people constantly go through this bullshit to emulate those that they talk about. It's so goddamn funny to me. Like somebody told me, they want our goddamn rhythm, but don't want our blues. But this bitch just got the blues. Enjoy, love. My next colonizer nonsense moment takes me to, well, it's not really a particular place. It's a group of people. And I'm talking about fucking PETA. Headline: PETA says phrases like "bring home the bacon" are comparable to racism and homophobia. God damn. Now, meat-based idioms like beating a dead horse or taking the bulls by the horn can be compared with homophobic and racist language, according to animal rights organization PETA. They said, and I quote, "Just as it became unacceptable to use racist language, homophobic or ableist language, phrases that trivialize cruelty to animals will vanish as more people begin to appreciate animals for who they are and start bringing home the bagels instead of the bacon." This is what PETA said. This is what PETA said on Twitter. Man, listen. The fact that you are comparing sayings about animals to goddamn racism and homophobia lets me know how truly ignorant and stupid and out of touch you really are, PETA. I mean, seriously. What the fuck y'all need to do is relax. Actually sit down and have a good ass steak from somewhere. Not that bullshit you've been eating. Not that cheap, well done shit. Get you a nice medium steak from a nice steakhouse, and I definitely will know you will change your goddamn mind about everything. Somebody need to shut them motherfuckers down. This is just absolutely ridiculous. Make me want to just pull up to their home office with a barbecue pit, smoking a whole goddamn pig, hog, and about 10 chickens, and just let the whole neighborhood just go at it right there at their goddamn front doorstep. Come on, Peter. Get it together. My final colonizer nonsense moment takes me to Minneapolis, Minnesota. Headline: Police chief demoted as fallout over racist Christmas tree continues. Well, a U.S. police chief has been demoted after 2 officers in his police station decorated a Christmas tree with racist ornaments. Inspector Aaron Baird of the 4th Precinct in North Minneapolis will be replaced by the previous commander, Assistant Chief Mike Keoghs, until the department finds a permanent replacement. Now, Baird will return to the rank of lieutenant and work in the traffic unit, according to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Or you could just let the motherfucker go. See how easy that is? Works for everybody. Now, the department didn't identify the officers who were responsible for it, but the Star-Tribune, who cited multiple sources, named 2 21-year veterans of the police force, Mark Boneshak and Brandy Steberg. A man named Brandy? I see why he angry. He got beat up a lot, I bet. Both men were placed on paid administrative leave last Friday after photographs of the Christmas tree were circulated on social media. Now, the tree, if you hadn't seen it, was decorated with Newport cigarettes, police crime tape, a can of Steel Reserve malt liquor, and Popeye's cups. Also with Takis and Funyun bags. Now listen, they can claim that it wasn't racist all they fucking want to, but when you are putting this type of shit up in an area that serves a majority of black people, you know what the fuck you doing. Now, I'm willing to bet $1 to a dime they laughed their ass off and talked about each goddamn stereotype as they decorated that tree. I hope they fire all their asses. Every last one of them ho-ho-hos. This week in sports, we kick off with the NFL, and I mean literally kick off with the Kansas City Chiefs, where they dismissed their former all-pro do-everything running back, Kareem Hunt, after video surfaced of him assaulting a woman. Now, this video, which was released by TMZ, and by the way, if you want to get somebody caught up, if you want to catch somebody doing some shit, go holler at TMZ. I'm talking about they find more dirt on people than the goddamn child support people and student loans. And by the way, Robert Mueller, if you really wanted to close your case, hire TMZ instead of them niggas you got working with you. But moving on. This video also goes in complete contrast to the stories that accompanied the still pictures before the video was released. Now, let me just say, I am totally against domestic violence. I am totally against assaulting women. I truly am. I was raised not to hit a woman, and I will not hit a woman unless it's to protect myself from being killed by her. I also believe in equal work, equal pay, and equality to the utmost. So, if you are a woman who feels you are big enough, bad enough, and bold enough to put your hands on a man, then you have to understand and be prepared for the consequences that follow, because most men don't think like me, and also Them Hands University does not discriminate when it comes to whooping ass, so you best be careful. Now, the still shots and headlines that accompanied this story before the video came will have you to believe that this man totally brutalized, savagely beat this woman, as some of the headlines that I saw described it as. But that was just not true. After pressing play on the video, I saw that the woman was indeed on the ground, but it was not because he pushed her. She was ran into by someone he ran into, and it was just a chain reaction. Now, as far as him kicking her, yes, he put his feet on it, and you should not put your feet on anybody, male male, female, white, black, whatever. You shouldn't kick anybody. But he didn't just rear back and kick her like he was kicking the game-winning field goal in a Super Bowl like they led you to believe. It was more of a nudge, and again, it was wrong. But what was also wrong was how all the blame was assessed to him. Again, he shouldn't have did what he did, but everybody was quick to jump on the bandwagon because of the optics of the situation without knowing the full story. Now, ESPN just came out and confirmed that the woman in the video was drunk and belligerent. She hit him first, and she called him a nigga. Now, again, I'm not saying he was right to do what he did. I'm just saying I understand why he did it. It's not what I would have did, but everybody don't think how I think. Over in the NBA, for the first time since the season kicked off, there was absolutely no smoke on the court this week. I know, shocking, right? But there was a very interesting quote from Kobe Bryant towards LeBron James that I thought I should talk about. In this quote, he said, and I quote, "Things MJ was doing, he learned from David Thompson and Jerry and those guys. Stuff I've done, I learned from MJ. Stuff that Bron does, he learned from me and playing on the Olympic team." Let me just start from the beginning. Listen, the stuff that you learn, let's scratch off learn and put copied from MJ, because that's exactly what you did. You copied how he played, you copied how he walked, copied how he talked, copied how he chewed gum. Hell, I think you'd have married Juanita if you thought it would have made you better on the court. Now, as far as what Bron learned from you, I don't know what all he learned, but I do know what he didn't learn from your ass. And he didn't learn how to pass from your non-passing ass. Hell, I don't think you would have passed the salt during dinner for Thanksgiving. Hell, your stubborn ass wouldn't pass gas. And I'm honestly believing you will live forever because your ass will refuse to pass away. Don't worry, folks. I'll be here all week. And also, according to Reggie Miller and Chris Childs, he damn sure didn't learn how to fight from your ass. Speaking of fighting, did you guys see the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight on Saturday night? Man, I was highly disappointed. I talked all that shit thinking that Deontay was gonna beat the shit out of this man within the first 5 or 6 rounds. Man, I was wrong. He let this soft, fluffy golden girl take his ass to 12 rounds. Now, without that last knockdown, I do believe that Tyson would have won on points because he was all over Deontay's ass. But at the end, Deontay dropped him like a goddamn bad habit, and that was the longest count I've ever seen, and the only reason why Fury didn't lose that fight. Now, I just can't see him winning after being knocked down twice, and because of that slow count, I also believe that's why the judges gave him a draw. Now, my inner Negro will not allow me to say that Deontay Wilder deserved to lose that fight because he didn't. He got robbed with that count. Speaking of getting robbed, millions and millions of people tuned in to watch this fight, and over 10 million people illegally streamed this fight. God damn. Now, I ain't saying that it ain't true, because I went to a nice spot to watch this fight, but I thought something was kind of odd because we were watching an American fighter fight on American soil, but the announcers on the stream we was watching was speaking in goddamn Mandarin. Well, and finally, in other boxing news, Floyd Mayweather... Shit. Floyd Mayweather versus Tenshin Nasukawa fight rules have been announced. Now, first of all, this is an exhibition fight between the two, and the rules are as follows. 3 minutes per round for 3 rounds. Straight boxing rules. Both will wear rising 8-ounce gloves. The weight will be 147 pounds. There will be no judges, and this will be a full contact competition, but the bout is not going to be on boxing or MMA records. Man, listen. Floyd, I understand what you're doing. This is a money grab. You got to do what you got to do to get your money. But here's what I think. You fighting this dude, and this dude ain't used to just boxing, so he's going to get his ass beat, presumably. And at some point, he's going to get tired of you hitting him upside his head, and he might revert to his old self, and that's when...
It's time for Reggie to karate-size your ass.
And when he does this and knock your ass out, you going to want to fight him for real, and that ain't a good look, man. Listen, after you get your money for this, just leave it alone, man. Walk away from the sport, train your fighters, get your money, and live your life. Please, I'm begging you. This week's episode has been brought to you by the fine folks over in Niagara Water. Last weekend, I drank too much brown liquor, and my kidney and liver need a goddamn break. I will see you guys next week. Now, before I get out of here, there's a few things I want to just quickly hit that I missed throughout the process of this episode. And the first thing that I want to touch on and say is RIP to one of my favorite artists of all times, Mr. Pimp C, Mr. Chad Butler, who died this week back in 2007. I still remember it like it was yesterday. This dude was one of the dopest artists I ever heard, and had one of the coldest verses I ever heard from the song Get Throwed. You all know what I'm talking about. R.I.P. to the one and only, all-time great, in my opinion, Mr. Pimp C. Another thing that I want to touch on, I talked about George Bush's funeral. Well, a lot of people made a big deal about the son giving Michelle a piece of candy. Now, that's a little tradition or whatever that they have between themselves. I really didn't see the big deal about it, but a lot of people talked about it, you know, invite him to the cookout and all this and that. It wasn't that big of a deal. Other people felt like people were forgetting who Bush really was, and no, we didn't. He still didn't like black people. Shout out to Kanye. So, you know, it really wasn't a big deal, you know, like people made it out to be. But I did notice the looks that happened, and Laura was like, you get that bitch one more piece of candy, I know something. And Obama was looking like, hold on, bruh, you need to slow this shit down, or I know something. But other than that, it really wasn't a big deal. In other entertaining news, Kevin Hart was tapped to be the host of the Oscars, and you know, people made a big deal about that as well, to the point where he said, fuck it, he stepped down. It all stemmed from a joke he had in his act about his feeling if his son became gay, and it also had something to do with some tweets he made that they consider homophobic. And he was like, look, I apologized back then, I ain't apologizing again, so fuck it, it is what it is. And I don't blame him. Fuck them. You know, even Snoop Dogg weighed in, told him to tell him they could eat a dick. We all know how Snoop feel about shit. So I'm the same way, man. He's a comedian telling jokes. Let that man live. But whatever. And finally, as always, I really and truly thank you guys for tuning in. I thanks for the support, the likes, the shares, the follows, the comments, the emails and whatnot. I really appreciate it all. Make sure you follow us on www.shadedshittalking.podbean.com. You can also find us on www.blackwithnochasers.com. And we have launched our internet radio station on live365.com at Black With No Chase as well. So I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and I hope you tune in.
Oh, thank you.